It's May 30th, 2022. This is Rook. Hi there, welcome to episode 181 of Rook. I'm Gian Gomeshi. Hope you're keeping well wherever you're tuning in from around the world. Hello to you from Toronto, from Canada. Salam Dustan Aziz, Durud Bar Shoma. Who do we have here today? Groovy Shaya.
Hi,
hello, sir.
Hi.
Hello, Captain Reza.
Hello, sir.
Hello, sir. And from Washington, D.C., our editorial board member, journalist, former BBC Persian Bureau Chief, current director of Persis News, Mohammad Manzarpour. Hi, Mohammed.
Hi, guys. Good to be with you.
Well, he gets a long title. I don't do all of that for you guys. You notice that?
I know. Well, that's because we're replaceable.
That is not true. Not true at all. You're irreplaceable.
Thank you,
in the and by the way, Keon is off on a family matter today, so we're missing her. But good to have Mohammed in her stead. Houshang Touzi. So, coming up, our featured guest, he's a renowned, deeply respected Iranian-American playwright, an actor, kind of a ubiquitous presence on TV and film screens. If you don't recognize his name, you've likely seen him. Homeland, Argo, Into the Night, as well as all his great theater work. So he's recently staged a really compelling play/musical called The Silver Poet. This is portraying the story of love and sacrifice of Feridun Farrokhzad. And Feridun Farrokhzad, of course, was a singer, performer, poet, actor, political scientist, opposition member, arguably the leading TV and radio showman of Iran before the revolution. And so Houshang plays Feridun, and he's quite remarkable in the role. So we're going to talk about that, his life, his career, his own story of struggle and success. Houshang Touzi joining me from Los Angeles in a little bit. I also wanted to say that I really want to talk about what's happening in Abadan. I think it'd be remiss if we don't. Before we get to Houshang, it's really sad. It's frustrating, enraging, another enraging situation in Iran again. We will get to that. But I thought we would start with some positive news
Oh, that would be nice.
in the Iranian diaspora. Is that you, Mohammed? You were receiving a message in response to our positive news.
It was.
Can you turn off your notifications?
Sure.
Congratulations to Zar Amir Ebrahimi.
Yes. Give it up. For another one for Iran.
The sound of three men clapping.
It's Keon's fault. It's not her fault. But
Zar Amir Ebrahimi, who won the Best Actress Award at the prestigious Cannes Film Festival for her role as a journalist helping to catch a serial killer in this thriller film called Holy Spider. So this just happened on the weekend. Of course, if you're in Persian social media, you would have seen her face everywhere. It's a feel-good story. It's partly a feel-good story because she has quite a story. Being exiled from Iran. She ended up landing up in France and without speaking French. And
her story, actually, I think Hollywood sooner or later they have to
do her story.
It's amazing.
And for a broader global community that seems to be divided on almost everything, including soccer games now. Mohammed, this seemed like a pretty universal moment of celebration for Iranians around the world.
Yes, especially because it's a very iconic comeback story for Zar Amir Ebrahimi, who was ostracized in Iran after a vengeful lover published, basically distributed footage of her, in very intimate circumstances that led to what I can only imagine was horrific social and even, I guess, community disrespect towards this young lady who at the time was a up-and-coming actress on Iranian television. everybody thought that this was the end of her, but she's managed to reclaim her position in arts, in cinema. Obviously, this was the peak of her achievements after that incident, and I think everybody loves her for that. It's such a beautiful comeback story that everybody can resonate with.
And hopefully it's just the beginning. I mean, we'll see
Yeah.
a lot more of her. I suspect now that the world's attention is on her for winning Best Actress at Cannes. And I like I said, I'm almost so scarred by how difficult it is for our community
Yeah.
to get along that I was almost looking for, I was like, wow, are we really all getting behind this actress? This is such a great story. Mohammed or Shaya, I don't know, do you have any idea how this is playing in Iran?
Well, I know that the media outlets close to the regime are attacking the movie and Miss Amir Ebrahimi. Today there was a kind of a campaign published by the Fars news agency close to the IRGC, asking people to sign up to a campaign asking for the legal persecution of anyone who has been involved in this movie. They find the movie very damaging to their image because it obviously depicts a serial murderer who murdered more than 30 prostitutes in Iran, and he was being portrayed as a champion by the ultra-right, by the religious right, and even after his arrest, there were calls for his glorification, and this movie has totally unveiled the cruelty and the inhumanity of hardline religious dogma and how it impacts.
I'm guessing Iran, it seems like the government in Iran hasn't yet got the memo that trying to ban things, especially on the international stage, will only draw more attention to it, right? I mean, it's like, just say nothing and maybe this movie doesn't have the same kind of impact. What were you going to say, Shaya, about the reaction to...
Actually, exactly what Mohammed said. Like the media close to the regime, they were like threatening people that we are coming for you, who helped this movie. Yeah, so it's
And in a lot of religious part of Iran, that kind of like ideology may work, but overall, it's not only a comeback story, but it's achieving the odds of like certain impossibilities. She won the Cannes best, like no matter how successful she would have been in Iran, like of course like accolades and money and all of that. But still, there are a lot of great and successful Iranian actresses in Iran that are working, yet they don't have that award. They're not best actress at Cannes, and that's big.
Well, I should add as well that she didn't just, I mean, Iranians tend to be aware of her story, or at least they are now, but she didn't just win this Best Actress award, which of course is prestigious, but most people, including us, will not have seen the film yet,
100%,
right?
yeah.
But it was in her acceptance speech that she also really galvanized support around the world, because she talked about her love for Iran. This is a woman who's been exiled and basically sent out of Iran, as Mohammed said, in terms of because of the circumstances that took place. Working on a film, winning an award for a film that isn't that people will not get to see in Iran, and she said, "My heart is with Abadan." So she took this opportunity. Arguably the only chance you're going to get at that kind of world stage, hopefully she gets more chances at the Oscars or whatever it is, but to do a shout out to Abadan, and I know that meant a lot to a lot of people around the world, and we'll talk about Abadan. But again, congratulations to Zara Amir Ebrahimi.
There
I
we
keep
go.
saying
You got
Ebrahimi,
it.
and I don't want. I'm sure she's listening, so I don't want to get it wrong.
Yes.
We are coming to you on rookmedia.com. It's there that you can link to all of our platforms. And we're on this ongoing mission to build a new audiovisual encyclopedia of Iranian diaspora identity. We're on Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Instagram, CastBox. If you like to see visuals, if you like to watch what you're hearing, switch over to YouTube or check us out on Instagram. And if you like your descriptions and bulletins in both English and Persian, check us out on Telegram. A big thanks to Kati Kavandi Immigration for support with this episode. This is a full-service immigration firm that offer all inland and overseas immigration services, including temporary visas, permanent visas, PR extensions, and citizenship applications. Kati and her team are available to inform and assist you as their client throughout the whole immigration process. And due to the current inflation and dollar rate in the Middle East and Iran, they are flexible to their agreement fees and are considering up to 20% discounts to their fees for new clients from the Middle East till the end of July. If you want to come to Canada or you're here and you need support, you need an immigration counselor, Kati is your person. Kati Kavandi Immigration Services. Instagram page, kati.kavandi.immigration. By the way, I know she really wanted to support this episode because she's a big fan of Houshang Tozi and believes in the work he does. Probably a big fan of Zara Amir Ebrahimi.
There you go.
Thank you very much.
Without any help.
I'm here all week. Ladies and gentlemen. If you've not been to the Museum of Contemporary Art in Toronto, Canada, this is a pretty good time for you to visit. Right now at the MoCA, the Museum of Contemporary Art in Toronto, is an exhibit called Shirin Neshat, Land of Dreams. Lots of folks listening may know of Shirin Neshat, an Iranian visual artist known especially for her work in film, video, photography. Well, this is her first major exhibition in Canada in 20 years. It sees the convergence of photography and film, bringing together a range of work in one immersive experience. This is stemming from her perspective as an Iranian immigrant living and working in the United States. Land of Dreams focuses on global issues of displacement, migration, geopolitical conflict. It is running until the end of July. You want to check this out if you're in the Toronto area. The central work that gives the exhibition its title comprises over 100 photographic portraits and a video installation, converging photography and film into an immersive experience that presents a perspective on contemporary America. Shirin Neshat, Land of Dreams at the MoCA, Toronto, the Museum of Contemporary Art, Toronto, until July 31st. Get your tickets. Run to this exhibit. All right, Houshang Tozi coming up. I said that I want to talk a bit about the situation in Abadan. You guys may know my father was born in Abadan, and which is, of course, part of Khuzestan, the southwest Iran region, where my dad's side of the family are from. Very close to Iraq. Couple of hours, maybe an hour or so away from Ahvaz, which would be the capital of the Khuzestan region. And it's interesting. I was reading about Abadan, and Abadan was a very small town. Before these rich oil fields were found in Abadan, Mohammed, you would know this. They weren't really discovered until the 20th century, and before that, Abadan's a very small town. And in fact, I guess when my dad was born there, because I saw that the population by 1949 even in Abadan was about 100,000. So before that, it wasn't even cracking the 100,000 mark. And then it's been this. It's not really a cultural or legal or sort of a center of Iran, but it's been at the center of a lot of what's happened in Iran. So the protests when Iran's oil was nationalized in 1951 took place in Abadan. Abadan plays an important role in the lead up to the 1979 revolution with the Cinema Rex fire, right? And then there's the Iran-Iraq war, which has this devastating impact on Abadan. And crazy information about this, which is that, the Abadan's civilian population by the end of the Iran-Iraq war was pretty much down to zero. I mean, people just abandoned the city because, it was the epicenter of this war. Wow. So today the population is around 250,000 folks. It's a big thriving city again. But if you've been hearing about Abadan and you don't know exactly what's been happening in the last couple of weeks, let me do a very, very quick primer. So the latest round of outrageous events in Iran happened when there was this deadly building collapse in Abadan that officials are blaming on corruption and lax safety. And then the death toll has continued rising as people were quite horrifically stuck under the rubble of this building. So the latest is that the death toll has risen to 31. And obviously the deadly collapse has raised questions about the safety of similar buildings in the country, in that city, underscored an ongoing crisis in Iranian construction projects. So authorities investigating the disaster detained Abadan's current and past mayors and several other municipal employees amid accusations that safety warnings were ignored. So this is bad enough, right? Rampant mismanagement, etc. But this mismanagement and needless death leads to protests. And then Iranian police use tear gas and fire shots at protesters trying to disperse the protests. So it's just been this tragic situation which has once again escalated, which of course says so much about the climate in Iran, especially for young people who we see are out there protesting. And by the way, it's hard to get information about this or see video because of the crackdowns on internet and social media. So, Mohammed, let me bring you in first. I hope I did okay as a primer, but what do you make of these protests and how quickly they can become very animated in terms of protesting not just this situation, but against the regime as a whole? Clearly, people are fed up, yes?
Yes, what we've been witnessing in Iran over the past 10 months is this is the fourth major public unrest against the regime. From day one on May the 23rd, when the incident actually happened and the building collapsed, the slogans and the reaction by the public has been very political and clearly targeting the head of the regime, Ayatollah Khamenei. People in general seem to accuse him of being the instrument of the corruption in the entirety of the structure of the Islamic Republic. And Abadan is incredibly significant, as you mentioned, because it's both, it has a special place for most Iranians. During the war, people from four corners of Iran went and fought in areas either inside Abadan or close to Abadan. When the Iraqi army encircled Abadan and thousands of lives were lost to recapture the entry points to the city. It was one of the greatest or the first major achievements of Iran during the Iraq-Iran war. So every Iranian has somebody who has lost their life in Khuzestan during the war. And Abadan has a special part of every Iranian's heart.
Muhammad Jan, if I may add to that, actually, Muhammad is right, because not only if you were an Iranian and didn't fight in Abadan, after war you may have neighbored in Abadani, and the reason I say that because when I was born, it was near the end of war, so I experienced maybe some sort of traumatic experience that I can't consciously recall, but my mom, she tells me about those stories, horrific, red sirens, and you had to go take shelter, stuff like that. But I grew up in Shiraz, southern Iran. Mahalleyama, our neighborhood.
Not super far from Abadan,
no, not
by
super
the way.
far from Abadan. And hence the closeness of it and the being adjacent to, not adjacent, but closer to Abadan. Post-war, a lot of Khuzistanis and Abadanis migrated to Shiraz. I grew up in their neighborhood. And I say their neighborhood because we were brother sisters. کاکو من لهجه شیرازی دارم من لهجه آبادانی believe it or not. Because of it, because I grew up with these people.
So even beyond Khuzestan or beyond Abadan, there's a brotherhood or sisterhood that people feel for this region. But Mohammed, I wanted to say, on the face of it, and sometimes I think we have to remind ourselves of this. Buildings do collapse in different parts of the world. I mean, this event could happen in Canada. Certainly doesn't happen with regularity. The fact that in Iran, these protests within the week have become about the supreme leader, about Khamenei, speaks, at least that's what we know of what we see in these protests. You can hear them on some of the video that's been shot, the youth there. It speaks volumes about how people feel about the situation in Iran, doesn't it? I mean, it's not something like this happens, and it's not an issue of, okay, well, I mean, it will be, and it needs to be litigated, and how exactly did this building, was it mismanaged? Did this thing collapse? Why are all these people under the rubble? Why can't we respond faster? All of the same questions we would ask if this happened in the United States. But it necessarily represents something much bigger, doesn't it, for Iranians, and certainly for those protesters. Can you speak to that?
Yes, absolutely. First of all, this particular building is such an example of the most destructive corruption which exists in the Iranian regime. The building itself had a permit for 7 stores. 3 stores were added to the initial permit. Even during construction, civil engineers from the municipality who have to approve these projects raised multiple red flags that this building is not even going to reach the day of inauguration. It's going to collapse. This was publicized by those engineers, by reporters who were reporting on the site. But the owner of the building was a sweetheart of IRGC and the Revolutionary Guards and whatnot, and he managed to basically circumvent all the resistance by the officials who were responsible for the safety of the building to build 3 more stores on the building and get a final approval for the opening of the building. So from day one, everybody kind of felt that this was basically the epitome of state corruption. At the same time, it happens at a time when the regime has cut the subsidies on wheat. People's purchase power has fallen to its lowest since the revolution, and there's a great sense in the society that the regime is basically still supporting its own pillars of power, like the clergy and the IRGC Sepahis.
And we're not particularly removed from the ongoing water crisis, too, right?
Exactly. Khuzestan has been the main victim of the water crisis in Iran, totally through mismanagement. One of the major cases is the Gotvan Dam, which, against every expert opinion, they constructed on a bed of salt.
Okay, let me just ask you quickly: what do you make of the authorities rounding up the mayor and the former mayor and some of the people who were the folks involved? I mean, and they've called, I think the Iranian government called for a national day of mourning or something. So presumably this is to placate or to demonstrate that the regime cares. What effect is this having?
First of all, Khamenei spoke on television 3 days after the incident. He didn't mention the incident at all. At the same time, they held a ridiculous party in the main stadium in Tehran, calling Salam Farmande, praising Ayatollah Khamenei, and having mixed boys and girls, where they always segregate the women and men in stadiums. They don't allow women in, but to praise Khamenei, they allowed women in. They didn't pay any attention to the grief of the nation. and now they're trying to play catch up.
A party that
At the same-
a party that 100,000 people or something attended. I might add, though, right?
Yes, but they have the mobilization networks to bring masses to these sorts of events. It's like any other dictatorship, South Korea, Nazi Germany, they can bring people from four corners of the country for their own events, but they will not allow peaceful demonstrators to protest anything in Iran.
Yeah, and it's North Korea, Mohammed John. You said South Korea.
North
Yeah,
Korea.
yes.
Sorry, yeah, sorry.
But on that note, if you were, I was gonna say, it feels like since the Iran-Iraq war, like Iran has never left the war, like one way or another. It's always been chaotic. Even when it wasn't, it was just.
Well, we had the conversation last week with Kiosk here in the studio about the fragility of hope, about whether we're even whether Iranian youth in Iran are even allowed to hope at this point. I mean, not as a dictate, but based on what they've seen around them, in some cases for their entire life, like you, post-revolution and post-war, Reza. And so there's this nihilism, this kind of. I mean, to be honest, one of the things that heartens me about the protests in the midst of this horrible situation is that young people still clearly are not just nihilists. They care. They want to try and change things. They want to try and address a situation like this. That said, Mohammed, we're not getting a lot of the information of actually what is happening on the ground, because from what I understand, there's been shutdowns of the internet in Abadan. And so even on social media, back to the Green Movement and how the whole world gets to watch what's happening. Well, in this case, the whole world isn't necessarily watching everything that's happening, because is this correct that, Ponton, our team, was saying that in some cases folks in Abadan are taking, video that they captured on the cell phones, going to another city to be able to get internet access to be able to share this with the world. Can you speak to that?
Well, internet coverage in Abadan has been intermittent during the past 4 days, and many people in Abadan are using SIM cards purchased from Iraq, which do operate in Abadan, which is very close to the border, and they can use those SIM cards to transmit images, transfer data outside the country and to different news sources. But generally speaking, I think there is a lack of empathy towards the protesters in Iran by international media organizations. Some of them have covered, for example, BBC has covered some of the protests. CNN International has covered it, but CNN terrestrial hasn't covered the events, or we haven't seen it in other outlets. I think perhaps if this has happened in, we had the same protest in Ukraine or somewhere else, they would have been, shouting it from rooftops. But maybe because it's us Iranians, they don't care, and I'm very angry about that.
Well, it's absolutely. I'm glad we're doing this in English, by the way, and the reality is, you're right. If you don't consume Persian media in Persian, most of it actually located in the diaspora. That's the ones that would be covering this. You don't know that much about what's going on in Abadan. I mean, try Googling Abadan protests. You get, something maybe from the Jerusalem Post, maybe Reuters had one Wire story. You're right, BBC and CNN had a couple of stories each. I mean, it's hard to say if that's what that's about. It may be kind of a rolling of the eyes fatigue of, oh yeah, that's happening in Iran again, for most of the rest of the world. But it's certainly sad. There was a terrible tragedy that happened in the U.S. this past week, Mohammed, where you are, and with that horrible shooting. I mean, not anything new in the States, but the wall-to-wall coverage of that much of it necessary, much of it important, much of it the issues around gun control in the West and in the United States are big. But to contrast that against, complete lack of coverage of anything that's happening in Abadan is interesting. Of course, we expect nations and the media of a country like the States to focus on their own what's happening within their own borders. But you're right, we still see a lot about Ukraine, we still see a lot about other places in the world, and this just hasn't made it on the radar.
Well, that's true because, and especially when the reputation of the regime is so important to them. I mean, for a film that gets a little bit of buzz in the festival circuits, they're banning it and playing temper tantrums. So imagine if there was coverage actually on this Abadan situation on CNN and breaking news every 5 minutes. Would have been different, very different.
You think that media coverage in the West of this would affect how the Iranian regime acts?
Yeah.
I always wonder about that.
On a macro scale of things, I don't know how much, but on a micro level, I'd say to a great extent, at least it elevates the pain to a certain extent. Like they have to, under pressure, like release one or two political prisoner, or at least pretend they care, or something. That's something.
Right.
I mean, that's better than nothing.
Mohammed, before we leave this subject, I just wanted to, and by the way, and Shaya jump in as well. I mean to cut you out here, but if there's one of the patterns that we've seen recently in Iran is how quickly, I mean, you were on the show not that long ago talking about how this happened in 1999. It certainly happened after that when there is a protest, when something's happening in one place in Iran now, it can quickly spread despite internet interruptions, despite lack of media coverage, etc. It can spread across the country. How much do you feel we're seeing that in this case in Iran? And how big a deal, how big a problem, if you will, could this become for the regime?
It's very difficult to say. We have seen sporadic protests in other cities close to Abadan, in Khorramshahr, in Shahinshahr, and in other places. In Tehran, we have seen mourners chanting against the regime, but in a very, I would say, low-key events in certain closed, environments. Everybody is guessing whether, the frequency of these protests, which we had in Khuzestan before for the water crisis, and we had in Isfahan for the water crisis. Now we're having it again in Khuzestan. Whether this would spread to the major cities. So far, I have to say that the response in the major cities has not been as many people expected. And, we have to discuss what is the social construct of Tehran these days. Who are the Tehranis? What is the middle class? What do they associate with? So that's a very long conversation, right, which we could have in another show.
Yeah, that's definitely something to pick up on. Did you want to say anything before we close this show?
Yeah, I mean, yes, actually, it shows kind of that maybe in some big cities, people lost their hope, because in Abadan, yes, they are fighting for hope, but I mean, based on just my talk to some of my friends, mm-hmm, they are like tired, they are. Yeah.
What's the point?
Yeah, what's the point? And it's sad, that they lost their hope.
Mohammed, I know you're a busy guy. I'm going to let you go, but thanks for joining us on these topics. Although you better continue listening in for Hushang Atozi. It's a really, really interesting journey he's on in his accomplished career, and I'm looking forward to talking to him. But thanks for being here.
Thank you very much. Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Mohammed Manzarpour joining us from Washington, D.C., former BBC Persian Bureau head and the director of Persis Media.
Bye, Mama John.
Bye, Mama John.
It was an interesting weekend here in Toronto. We're lining up Hushang here. I wanted to say, well, Reza, I don't know what you were up to. I mean,
Me?
God knows what you're up to.
You don't wanna
But
know.
but Shaya, there was a couple concerts. I mean,
Yes.
it's not often that I get to go to 2 Persian rock concerts basically in one night. And so your buddies Chartar,
Yes.
who are a really interesting. I mean, this is going to sound like for certain Iranians, they know everything. You know, they're very enthusiastic about Chartar. So forgive me for sounding like I'm just giving the novice explanation of who they are, but kind of a progressive rock ish musical adventurous band that is located in really interesting poetic Persian lyrics.
Yes.
And changing band members except for the lead singer Arman and the songwriter Ehsan. But so interesting as a band. So they were playing the Elgin Theatre in Toronto, and I got to see that show and was excited to see them for the first time, and then ran over to see our buddies Kiyusk, who were playing a big rock show at a so it's like Toronto was turning into the Persian Rock Festival here, you know. And Kiyusk were fucking great. I was really fun, really great. Like
You actually invited me too. You were like, "Can you get your tickets?" And I would have loved to come, but I had
and where were you?
Friend's birthday party.
Oh, all right.
Oh.
Well,
Downtown.
they're priorities.
Hey,
Some of us,
they're friends.
some of us want to support great musical artists, and
He's a
others-
great musical artist.
Who is
fan?
your So yeah, they were the Kiosk. You know, it was their. I mean, everybody's coming off the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I know Chartar were having some sound trouble and stuff. And your heart breaks because you can think, well, of course. I mean, no one's mid-tour yet, you know, because things have just opened up. Well, some folks are mid-tour, but you know, for the most part. And this was Kiosk's like second gig, I think.
Wow.
You know, they did Vancouver
Fresh,
and then Toronto, but they were in fine form. I mean, they were just. You know,
I mean, he even said it in an interview last week. He was like, some of these songs, we played it so many times. When you've been in a band, it's kind of second nature. Like,
kind of for sure once you're back on stage, but you know, just the tightness of the band takes some. But Chartar also had some of the best players in Toronto in their band, like the drummer Maurizio and the whole band was just like phenomenal.
What interesting about Chartar, and I mean interesting about Toronto, is that Chartar actually they are banned in Iran right now.
Oh, really?
I didn't know that. Yeah. They are mamnu.
But how could Armand fly back and forth? Or that's okay.
He came here, but no. What I'm trying to say is that they are banned in Tehran, so they have to fulfill their, stay in Toronto.
they are banned, but they're banned from performing, but not from living.
Not from living.
Yeah, they just can't work. Basically,
Great,
in Iran.
thanks.
They still have to make a living.
But
so
why would they be banned?
Because Armand was supporting women singer.
No,
Yep.
that's enough to get you.
Yes,
Yeah,
to
yeah.
get you
Yeah,
banned.
yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting.
You mean
they-
just speaking or like
No,
supporting just by speaking out on that?
Yeah, he posted a post on Instagram, and so
And that gets you banned, your
Yes.
music banned.
yes.
Wow.
And so they have to fulfill their, because stage, I mean, you know that if you are a musician, you are kind of addicted to being on stage.
Yes.
So pandemic for 2 years, it didn't allow us to be on
Yes.
stage, but now Iranian regime didn't allow them to be on stage, so they have to travel to Toronto
Yeah.
to like.
Well, and it's funny because I mean they had a huge audience, and Arash Sobhani was saying it Toronto feels like Tehran to him. You know,
Of
now
course. Yeah.
Toronto now feels like
Now.
Tehran back then.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It just he's like the audience is awesome, and so when you get together after the gig, Shia, with like guys like Armand, is it like we're the band musicians? Like you feel like a kinship with all the other band musicians.
awesome. It's
Probably a good thing you didn't come, Reza. I mean,
Yeah?
what are you going to mix with these talented
Hip,
musicians?
cool
hipsters,
musicians.
yeah.
Hey, come on, I'm hip. but on the note of being hip, Hushang
Yes.
Tozi and Faridun Farrokhzad, every time, and this was one of the first Persian songs I ever heard, because my grandfather was a fan of Faridun Farrokhzad. So every time I hear name of Faridun Farrokhzad, I hear Yad Iran Bekhair, Yad Iran Bekhair, Khak far Salavat. That's his song.
Thank you very much, Reza. I hope Hushang's not on the line yet.
Oh my God.
Where-
Shangjan, I'm sorry,
was
brother.
He
Not
does
gonna-
it. He spent
sorry.
years crafting an amazing
I
show
know,
where he plays
I
Faridun Farrokhzad.
I know. I hope he hasn't done a lot of research on him. 'Cause
Yes, he has.
Oh my God.
Yes, he has. In fact,
Sorry,
we
Hussein.
got him. Right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, let's get to our featured guest. Thank you very much, Captain Reza. Thanks to Ahai Mohammed. Thanks to Groovy Shaya. My featured guest today is a renowned and deeply respected Iranian-American playwright and actor. Houshang Tozi is in that select few great Iranian artists who've built a solid career of popular works outside of Iran whilst combating all the challenges and obstacles that most Iranian artists have faced in exile over the last 40 plus years. Houshang was born and raised in Tehran. He started his career in Kargah Namayesh. He moved to the U.S. shortly after the Islamic Revolution to pursue his acting career, where he met his life partner, Shohreh Aghdashlu. Together, they founded the Los Angeles-based production company Workshop 79 with a mission, they said, to produce satirical works in Farsi outside of Iran. Their major hits, from Satellite with Love, The Great Escape, and An Iranian in Heaven, are all socio-political satires about Iranians in the diaspora. Houshang, of course, is also known for his presence in American movies and TV series. There's lots of them, but they include Into the Night, Homeland, Argo, and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. One of his latest works is a musical play called Silver Poet, where he appears in the role of the legendary Iranian showman, poet, and writer Feridun Farrokhzad. It is part tribute, part entertaining spectacle, and part history lesson that features Houshang on stage in almost every scene, carrying the central role of Farrokhzad. It recently played in Toronto. It was riveting, and I had the occasion to see it. And right now, it's a great pleasure to have Houshang Tozi joining me from Los Angeles today. Hello, sir.
Hello, Gian. Thank you so much for your fantastic introduction. I'm so grateful to be here. I'm so very happy to be here.
I'm just stating the facts. I mean, there's a lot more I could say. In fact, I want to focus on the Silver Poet and your personal story, but I should say that everything I've ever been told about you is that you always have a lot of projects going on. Is that true?
Yeah, that's true, because I love theater and I do my best to be in the theater. That's what I've done all my life. So when I was a kid, I was taken to a play. I was very little. I'm like 6 years old. And then my older brother, was a set designer at one of these Tehran's theater. And then he used to bring us comps so we could go with the family. And I was amazed by actors on the stage, movements, lighting, laughter. And then at that age, I knew what I liked to do in my life, and that was acting. That was theater, and I've never done anything else.
So it comes from a place of real passion, or is it also, I mean, this idea that you always have a lot of projects going on? Are you, would you describe yourself as a workaholic? Are you something, I mean, you look at your IMDb, you've certainly done a lot of things. You don't seem to take it easy.
Yeah, you can say that. I remember when I was a kid, I mean, teenager probably, some of my friends used to go to Germany for becoming engineer. And one of these friends came back for a visit, and I said, so if you can give me one reason why you go to Germany. He said, in Germany, you learn whatever you do it, you be at best. If you become an abahozi was the lowest job in Iran. But he said, in Germany, they teach you whatever you do, even if you're an abahozi, you have to be the best abahozi in the whole world. That is still in my head. I like to do my best in whatever I do. I'm not saying I succeeded every time, but I had so many failures.
Is it about you doing your best, or is it about you being the best? I mean, are you competitive?
No. I do my best. I'm not sure if I'm my best yet, or the best in the field, but I try my best.
You've sort of been on all sides of this as a performer, as a playwright, as a director, as a teacher. Do you feel like you're still learning at this stage?
Absolutely. I don't think there is an end to learning. As a matter of fact, I think I'm learning now than I used to learn when I was 20, 30, 40, 50. So because what I learn now is so deep, so deep, I deeply learn whatever happens. And to be honest with you, of course, I consider myself a lucky person, and I'm so grateful to that. But I had so many failures in my life. I had more failures than success, and I've learned more, a lot more, from my failures than I've learned from my success.
Let me come back to that. That's an interesting thing to say. I'm
All right.
gonna flag that and come back to it. By the way, I thought you were 40. You mean you're older than that?
I'm 20. I feel 20 years old.
I don't know
Really?
how you accomplished this, but your age isn't actually anywhere on the internet. So as far as I'm
Yeah.
concerned, you might be 40. It doesn't. You look like a young
Thank you
guy.
so much. You're so kind. I love you for that.
So let me ask you a little bit about the Silver Poet, because having seen it just last month, it's still in my mind. It's still in myself. I'm thinking about it a lot. First of all, tell me when you first had. I know you've been working on this for a while, and you've performed it over the last 2 or 3 years a number of times. When did you first have the idea to do a play about the late Feridun Farrokhzad, and to, in fact, embody the role of Feridun yourself?
Years ago, I think it was 1992, I was acting in a play called Mahakeme Cinema Rex, The Trial of Cinema Rex by Mr. Parviz Sayyad. And I had a part. I had a good part in that. And then we planned to go on a tour to Canada, to US, and then go to Canada. And at the same time, same day that we were supposed to go by RV, Mr. Sayyad was telling us Feridun Farrokhzad has been killed. So FBI has notified him that you are on the list, Mr. Sayyad. And so you have to be very careful. So Mr. Sayyad discussed with us, do you want to continue on the tour or you want to go back home? Everybody said, let's go. Let's go on a tour and let's do it. At that time, something happened in my mind. Years later, when I realized nobody has talked about it, nobody has written something about it, nobody is even mentioning how horrible Feridun Farrokhzad was killed. So I said, oh my God, so many people in the Iranian music industry, so many people who owe their popularity or fame to Feridun Farrokhzad, nobody's even paying attention to that. Then I've received a book by Iranian poet from Germany who published a book about Feridun Farrokhzad, Khunyagar dar Khun, a singer in blood. And I love that book. And the guy said, listen, I was never a fan of Feridun Farrokhzad, but I'm doing this for him because nobody is mentioning it. And then I said, okay, I'm not in the music industry, I'm in theater, but I got to do something. At that time, I was really sick and tired of being responsible for the whole play, writing, directing, producing, investing, acting, I said, you know what? I want to do a one-man show. So I spoke to a friend of mine. I said, I want to do a one-man show. He said, what do you have in mind? I said, I have one idea on a singer called Abbas Mar Safid. That's a different story. It's amazing story. And then the other one is Feridun Farrokhzad. And she said, this is it. Go ahead and I'll help you. So anyway, to cut a long story short, I started writing it in a one-man show. And then we ended up having 12 people on stage in early performances. And at some point, we had like 20 people, extras, in a cafe, which Feridun Farrokhzad is doing his last show. But later on, for making it a little bit more comfortable to go around, to cut the cost and everything, so we trimmed it. We didn't cut any scenes, but actors are doing different characters.
Yes.
Like, you know,
It's a tight and efficient cast that does a great job.
Exactly.
But you're still, I mean, you're really carrying this thing. I mean, like I said in the introduction, watching you, you're in almost every scene, and you do quite a remarkable job. I'm not the only one saying this. I mean, everybody has said this. Seemingly transforming into Farrokhzad. This, I have to imagine, even for someone with a fair bit of experience like you as an actor, this must have been quite a process of becoming intimate with getting to know who he was. I know you only ever met him a couple of times or something in your life. So what kind of process was it for you to really learn how to adopt his character and his characteristics?
Fortunately, there were so many information about him online. So I started researching everything that was online I could get my hands on. And also I talked to several people who knew him and they were working together. Many people. 90%, it wasn't true. Everybody was saying something out of their perspective. So I didn't want that. So I heard them all. And then I started writing, and I really didn't want to do a documentary on him because it wasn't my job. I wanted to do something about Feridun Farrokhzad, the poets, not the singer, not the political activist, but I really cared about what he felt, what he thought. So everything is in it. But most of all, I saw him as a little kid that was so much ahead of his time.
سوی تو میایم برهد باز این چه سخن باشد که شکوفت در دل هر آواز.
Years before I started writing this play, a friend of mine, a filmmaker, offered me to play his role.
Oh.
I said, no, I cannot do that. I have nothing to do with him. How do I do that? He's not a regular guy. Everybody knows how he talked, how he moved, how he sang, how he, so it is not easy for me. He said, years ago, by the way, I did a play and I did Mohammad Reza Shah, the young Mohammad Reza Shah.
Yes.
And that was very successful. He said, why did you do that? You have nothing to do with Shah. I said, listen, that's theater. I'm the animal of theater, not movies. So he said, let's give it a try. So he took me to Berlin in Germany without paying anything. I said, okay, I'll come. So, and we did a movie. We did like 7 minutes, 8 minutes, short film to show it to producers or financiers, And that little movie was so fantastic. But we were not able to raise the money. So production was canceled. So for that, I started researching and rehearsing his movements, the tone of his voice, Everything was so successful. And then I said, okay, that was a thing. I should use it. And years later, when I started writing this, I already had this base.
What did you most want to communicate about him? In other words, it's an interesting character to play because he's a real life person and he's bigger than life. And you're dealing with an audience that on the one hand, many of the people who are going to come to your show, Iranians of a certain vintage, are going to know a lot about him. On the other hand, there's all kinds of other people coming to your show like me who grew up in the diaspora who may not know that much about him other than I've heard his name. I've seen some things on YouTube. What did you know that you really had to communicate about him?
When I came here, after the revolution, I had time to think that what is the essence of being a playwright or artist. in general, Hunarmand. And I came to this conclusion that the art of an artist, the work of an artist, is to make people happy, to make people informed, to make people feel. So in any case, you have to be entertaining. You have to entertain people. People, especially Iranian after revolution, were so sad, so desperate for happiness. So I have that subject in my mind always, even though you are doing a tragedy.
Yes.
Because tragedy, as they say, tragedy, comedy is tragedy plus time.
Yes.
Whatever happens in the history, then after a while you can make a comedy out of it.
But can I just, as a sidebar, it's so interesting that you should say this, because I have been throughout my life, as a kid of the 80s and 90s and stuff, I would hear this music, this Persian music from LA from the 80s, the Shisha Hasht and all that, and I would think, this is nonsense. What is this cheesy music? And I never got it until recent years in doing a program like this, that exactly as you say, the people at that time coming from Iran, many in exile in Los Angeles right after the revolution, didn't have the patience or the desire to hear sad, depressing music. We've been through enough sadness and depression. Give us some 6/8, we'll dance, and that's what we want. And that's kind of what you're saying is also the case in theater and film, etc. Yes?
Absolutely. Going back to your question, is I wanted to create a play that this world that we live in, there's no guarantee in nothing. You do not know about anything in 5 minutes. So to me, he was, as you said, bigger than life. He was coming from a great family, Forough Farrokhzad, another sister, Purana Farrokhzad, Feridun Farrokhzad. And all these three people, they were in, not even 1% of Iranian could be like them. So why an artist, Iranian artist, in Germany, in England, is talking his mind and gets killed? That can happen to any of us. That was my main thought. Why? If we believe in free speech, he didn't do anything else. He didn't take guns or anything else. He just talked. And I really didn't, Jian, honest to God, I didn't want to make him a hero. I didn't. You should know that. And I didn't to put him down. To me, he was an artist. Did he have shortcomings? Of course, we all have. But he didn't deserve that.
But you've said, I've heard you say elsewhere that you believe he was a poet, not a political activist, or but the show is political. I mean, I guess it can't help but be, So is that to say that he couldn't help but be political in terms of what had become of his life and career after the revolution?
My perspective was, I want to do something about a poet, Iranian poet, not political activist. But he was a political activist. I didn't want to go through that window. But I was loyal to that. I was loyal to whatever he said or whatever he did, but I didn't want to go to make a documentary on political activists.
Right.
Because that was a part of him, not the whole of him.
But the majority, Houshang, the majority of the play takes place after the revolution, when he's in these fading years and he's desperately trying to get the resources and platform that he had before. I mean, why focus on that period? You could have showcased him at his zenith in the mid-late 70s, right?
Absolutely. The play starts from 1987.
Yes.
When he had a huge concert in London, Albert Hall. So I was told there were like 7,000 people, and 7 people could ruin it for him, you know? So that was interesting for me. That was very dramatic. That was his first confrontation with audience, with a huge audience. And then everything started from there. Everything started from there. And then after he was confronted with those people, thugs, then he started going on and on and on and on and on until he had no control whatsoever. And I want to add this, maybe it's not the right time or place,
Please.
but he was so smart. He was smart. He couldn't easily fall into the trap. I think he wanted to go. He embraced death because he had no other place to go. He was killed then in August 1992. But before that, he was dead. His soul was dead. Who killed his soul? We did. I did. The society, especially the society in Los Angeles. We killed him.
مرا کشته نگاه تو نشینم چشم به راه تو که بینم روی ماه تو گشت سجدگاه من ماه من کعبه رویت دل شده اسیر دام تمام اتاق
When he went back from Los Angeles to Bonn in Germany, he was a dead man. He was doing, after he was giving concert for 7,000 people, he was doing plays. He was doing, how do I say, not concert, in Chelo Kebabis, in cafe, with 30 people. 30 people who are eating, not even listening. And that's so painful for him.
In Los Angeles too, there's that scene that, I mean, for any of us who've been performers or in the media, that it's heartbreaking where he goes to it's a Los Angeles satellite station or something, and they, he says, but how are we supposed to do this? You only have one camera and it doesn't work very well. And they're like, yeah, don't worry about it. It's okay. And he's used to a certain standard, even of professionalism, that he can no longer attain.
Exactly. So to me, I believe he wanted to go. He loved Iran, maybe more than anybody else. He loved Iran and he loved his mother. Now, why the whole thing came to my mind? Because, first of all, I gotta tell you, maybe 5% of what you heard from this actor as Feridun Farrokhzad on the stage was Feridun Farrokhzad's dialogues. Mm-hmm. The rest, 90%, 95%, was my creation based on his way of life, his way of thinking. And also, believe it or not, there are so many mutual feelings between me and Feridun.
Thank you. That is the segue that I wanted to go to, because you are not George Clooney playing Che Guevara, somebody who's completely got a different experience. Yes, you are not Feridun Farrokhzad, you're younger, you're whatever, we can, the differences, but it's very interesting that you're playing a role, particularly the heartbreaking, the tragic part of it, in terms of being necessarily exiled, being removed from your craft and your country where you were doing your work and you were growing. That's something that you share with Feridun Farrokhzad. And I wonder, I was going to ask you exactly this about the emotions that you bring to this. I don't know the exact story of why you left right around the time of the revolution or thereafter. I'm assuming you didn't leave willingly. I'm assuming you would have stayed if Kargah Namayesh would have stayed open. Tell me that story and how you feel those similarities.
When I was working in Kargah Namayesh Tehran's Dhamma workshop, a year before revolution, we used to do plays, and somebody would come from Iranian television to take pictures. One guy, whose name was Mehdi, I forgot his last name, he came and he took some pictures from the play, and wow, it was so amazing. I said, "Hey, Mehdi, where are you coming from?" He said, "I was studied in NYU, New York, and I had an older brother in New York he was in New York years before." And I said, "Oh my God!" From then, I thought, "Oh my God, I got to go to New York because my brother is there, and I'm going to NYU to study cinema and come back to my country." And then I left before revolution. On the, very close to the revolution. And then I found out I cannot go. I cannot afford to go NYU. NYU is a very expensive university, and I don't have that money. I didn't know English at all. Anyway, so I started working theater. Okay. I wanted to go back. Then hostage situation occurred. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't get money from Iran. So I had to start working, odd jobs, and dreaming to go to Broadway. That was my dream 40 years ago. And now it's coming true. I'll tell you later after this.
Wow. But that's quite a teaser. I'll come I flag that. I'll come back to that. But is it true? So in the early 80s, you're in New York, and what you said, odd jobs, but I understand you were washing dishes. You were not doing glamorous work. Houshang, were you angry?
No, I was so very sad. I was depressed. I was literally depressed to my teeth. I couldn't even move. I had to work to make a living. So that was that. But I was a dead soul.
How low did you sink? How would you characterize the most difficult days of that period?
Because by that time when hostage situation took place, everything was changed. I was in New Jersey, New York. Okay, I used to go to New Jersey on the weekend, and during the week I was in Manhattan and working hard because I had to make my living. And then it was really scary. It was scary. I didn't feel comfortable. I didn't feel safe. Now everything is changed.
Of course.
You cannot feel that fear.
I would imagine at that time, you would think that you probably would never get work as an actor as an Iranian man, right? Absolutely.
And also, I wasn't sure that if I can go back to Iran. By then, I knew Iran. I love Iran. Still, I love my country. I love Iran. I love America too, because these two countries, I was born in Iran. Whatever I have as an actor from Kargah Namayish Tehran, from Tehran's Drama Workshop, I'm so grateful to that. And then America gave me opportunity to work in my own language. France doesn't let you do that.
How did you look? I don't even have to say the names. We both know that there's incredibly talented folks who similarly were big stars in Iran, who after the revolution were exiled and pretty much never worked again. Were unable to, couldn't bring themselves out of it. That hasn't been the case for you. How did you? You've built this very prolific career that we've been talking about. How did you get out of that depression? How did you rebuild yourself?
I think that was the love for theater. If I was, instead of becoming an actor for theater, or writer, a playwright, I would die like 7 times. Honest to God. I had so much failures. I had so much problem in my mind. So I think the only thing saved me up to today is theater.
ای شرقی غمگین وقتی آفتاب تو رو دید تو شهر بارونی بوی عطر تو پیچید شب راهشو گم کرد تو گیسوی تو گم شد آفتاب آزادی از تو چشم تو خندی ای شرقی غمگین تو مثل کوه نوری نظر خورشیدمون بمیره تو مثل روز پاشی مثل دریا مغروری نظر خاموشی جون بگیره.
But theater is a live thing. It's a group. Without that group, I would die because I was never alone. I was with my fellow actors, with the team. So we help each other to grow, to stay alive, you know. And somebody told me, you are not a writer unless you cannot not to write. You're not able not to write.
Right.
And you write until you die. So they say, if you're a writer, you should do as clergy do. They wake up 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning, I don't know what time, and they do namaz or prayer or whatever, even though they're sick, even though they don't want it. But they wake up, they do it. So as a writer, as a playwright or poet or whatever, you just got to do it. Just do it. And this Just Do It by Nike, it for some reason I was haunted by this. Just do it. You never lose anything.
It's interesting you should say that, because I was going to ask you, I mean, you are very prolific. Aside from being a great talent, you know, what do you attribute your ability to score so much film and TV work over the years, and acting and theater? I mean, if a young person comes to you and says, what's the trick? What's the magic sauce? How do you do it? Is that what you say? You just got to get up every day?
I would say you have nothing now, right? That's why you came to me and asked me, how do I do that, right? My daughter asked me, how do I do it, Daddy? How did you become successful? I said, by doing it. What did I have to lose? Right now, what do I have to lose if I don't do it? I love to take risks. I love to do risk. At one time, Tara, my daughter, said, Daddy, why are you doing so many difficult things? Can't you do some more comfortable play? Right. I said, no, I cannot do that. That doesn't satisfy me. I have to do something that is challenging to me. I don't know if I can do it or not. If I know I can do this, I'm not going to do it. Why should I do it? Because I already know that I can do it. I'm able to do that. I got to do something that I don't know. I don't know if I'm able to do that. That's challenge. And then that's drama. And I'm working drama. So why don't I take risks? What do I lose? Losing, we all know, Gian. We all know what to do with our success, right? Success is success. We know how to do it, how to deal with it. But what we don't know is how to deal with our losses. We need to learn the art of losing. We know the art of success. Everybody knows. But what we don't know is the art of losing.
I said that, you know, I flagged it to come back to it. I mean, you say to an interviewer, I've had many failures. It's like catnip. Okay, well, I want to know what the failures are. So tell me, when you say that, what comes to mind as a failure that you've had? I mean, I say that respectfully, of course, because we talk about all the celebrated things you've done. A failure that you've had. What would come to mind, and that's something that you learned from that?
Years ago, my wife was pregnant with Tara, and we had a very kind of zero budget. But I was working in movies then, 1985. And before that, we made a movie first started with Mr. Sayyad, and then I did one off-Broadway show, Tibetan Book of the Dead, in La Mama in New York City. And my goal was to stay in New York City and, you know, stop thinking Farsi, speaking Farsi, just go for the Broadway. And then after I made that movie with Mr. Sayyad Ferestadeh, which was a very good movie, I came to Los Angeles for only one night for the opening of it, and then I fell in Dighe Qurme Sabzi. So many people was so kind to me, and everything looked so comfortable here. So I came back. Anyway, I did a play. We were able to do it 4 performances, not very successful performances. That's it. And my second play was a play, Lost in the Winds, was political. There was like 30 people, 25, 30 actors on a stage, and we had only 2 performances, and that was disaster. After that, I made a play called Bouye Khosh Ishq, The Sweet Scent of Love. We were hoping to do it because of a comedy. We were hoping to have 10 performances and, to make a little bit of money. We did more than 500 performances in 4 years, non-stop.
None of these sound like failures so far.
No, absolutely. Okay, now we're getting there. So we made a lot of money. We bought a house, right? 4 years, consecutive years. We did that all over the world except for Iran. I mean, Australia, Europe, Canada, US. And then after that, I made a play called In the Search of Amir Arsalan, another political thing. We worked on it. I wrote it in 1 year, and we had money, right? From Bouye Khosh Ishq. And then we rehearsed for 1 year. It was a failure. We did like 4 or 5 performances, and we had to stop it. In that time, we spent all the money we made before, and then we started borrowing money on our house, and our house went to the bank.
Oh, wow.
Bankrupts. In that wood and his house, we had some trees, and I was the last night. I found myself I'm in the dark. I'm talking to these trees and saying goodbye to them because I love them so much. So that was so very painful, and we had a little girl. So after that, I don't know what happened. As I told you, I got so depressed for a year, the whole year, and also I had other failures. I mean, personal and in my work. There was time that in 1985, when I came from New York, came to Los Angeles, because of the movie Ferestade was very well received by New York Times and you name it. So an agent approached me, and immediately I did Into the Night with Michelle Pfeiffer, Jeff Goldblum, and I got to work with David Bowie for 8 days. Hey, David, how you doing?
If you know anything about me, that's like saying that's the top of the mountain. That is incredible.
Incredible. But after that, I started, and everybody told me, "Oh my God, now you go places." Nothing happened. I started working in American TV series, like with in the A-Team with George Peppard, and I was getting punches from them. I did little parts. All of a sudden, I was throwing up. What is this? This is not for me. And I spent like three years working in American movies and TV series, and it was horrible. And I got so depressed. When you lose something, when your engine is off, it's so difficult to get it back on.
Is it helpful in those moments if you have a partner? You had Shohreh Atashlu, you'd formed this Workshop 79. Is it helpful in that scenario, or is it even worse because you're both suffering the bankruptcy and all of that?
We both suffered, but Shohreh, unlike me, that I got deep in depression, she never goes to depression. She's just like a lion. Forget about it. We make it again. Don't worry about it. So she really helped me. She helped me. I mean, that theatrical group Workshop 79 that we named it. So it owes so much to Shohreh. I'm telling you. I was the playwright, I was the director, I was the producer, But having Shore in my place was wow. It was amazing. Of course, before that, I did plays without Shore, but when Shore came to, her soul was so big, heart so big. She was so happy always, and then that helped a lot.
But can I just say, with so much respect, that it is so. Oftentimes, I find conversations like this really gratifying because, from the outside and in a superficial way, as you said earlier, in a 5-minute way, one might look at you and just say, "Well, this guy's." He had a silver spoon, he's had an easy ride. He's a successful guy. What does he know about adversity? He and his wife have been very, very successful. To know the kind of resilience that it takes to have been you is helpful, because life is a challenge for everyone. And one of the things that we see in The Silver Poet that feels like the theme of the play for me, the tragic theme, obviously beyond him, being assassinated, but being killed, is this feeling of resignation that slowly seeps into him. This where he says "Bosche" every time, he's in a situation where he can't, he realizes this is so much less than what he expects of his life and of himself and others. And he kind of resigns himself, says "Bosche, okay. And it seems to me that I was going to ask you if you could relate to that in any way, but it sounds like your life has been the opposite of that, of at some point not saying "Bosche" and to keep going no matter what.
On the contrary, I've always said "Bosche." I cannot say no. I mean, I don't want to say I cannot say no, but rarely I said no to anybody, unless that was something crazy or against my beliefs. Whenever they asked me to do something, I said "Bosche." I don't know why I do that. Still, I'm doing that. I don't know why. But you know what? At the end of the day, it's everything turns out to be so good for me. I'm not superstitious. I'm not even fundamentalist. But I believe in karma. You reap what you sow, right? You reap what you sow. I know that. So I'm saying I'm full of shortcomings. I know that. And I think when you know your defaults, when you know your shortcomings, okay, you don't go crazy. You okay. I'm not a complete person. I have so much shortcomings. So what? And I make so much mistakes. So what? I learn from it. I think it's Beckett says, or Brecht or something. I forgot. It says, fail. Next time, fail better.
What's a shortcoming that you had that you've learned from and you've overcome? What's a shortcoming that characterized you, that you've been fighting throughout your life, that you've been able to?
Yeah, that is that is what is in my character. I cannot put up with bullies, with bullying. I cannot do that. So a lot of people say, "Come on, be a little bit of diplomatic and say, okay, you're right, yeah." I cannot do that because I don't want to lose myself. Gian, I've lost many things, but I've gained a lot. But when you lose yourself, you got nothing. If you're George Clooney, as you said, if you don't respect yourself, if you don't have respect for yourself, if you have lost the character, so it doesn't matter how much money you have, how much fame you have. It doesn't matter. For me, I like to sleep at night like a baby. That's it. What else do I need? I'm in a country you don't die from hunger, right? And also, I worked so hard. I've worked so many years. I can stay home, read books. My favorite writer is Gabriel Garcia Marquez. I can read 100 Years of Solitude by him 100 times, and really enjoy it. That's the best time for me. Reading his books, lying down on the bed watching movies. That's fantastic. I said, that is paradise. Why do you, every time you go to heaven, to do things like this? And I did a play based on Shahnameh, and with 30 actors and 15 people working around it, and they just taped it, they just filmed it, because I wasn't able to take it on a stage because of pandemic. And my daughter says, why are you doing this? I said, I don't want to be in the comfort zone. I don't want to do that, because it doesn't give me anything. I have to take risks. I'm not saying this is good. I'm saying I enjoy it. I enjoy giving service and say, yes, bosh.
Except if it's a bully. Except if it's a bully, you don't say bosh.
Absolutely. I mean, so many things I say no. If a play is not saying things that I believe in, I say no. Of course, I passed a lot of movies. I never played a terrorist. I'm not saying playing a terrorist is bad, but when you call it a terrorist, if you call it freedom fighter, okay, but you already called it terrorist, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do anything that is not fair. But I had my mistakes. I've learned from it. I'm much more, alert now.
I love so much of what you just said. Although my choice would be "Love in the Time of Cholera" from Gabriel Garcia Marquez, not "100 Years of Solitude." And maybe you should, that's if you can do a stage show or a film of "Love in the Time of Cholera," I'll be the first one to buy the ticket.
Oh my God, that's an amazing story! Yeah. Amazing story.
It really is.
And I think they made a movie out of it.
I think they did too. I didn't. I think they did, and I think I intentionally avoided it because I love that book so much. It's to me that
the right thing. The movie wasn't good. The movie wasn't good. It's very difficult for.
I'm so grateful for the time you've given us. I haven't forgot about coming back to talk about something you said, something about Broadway, and I want to. That's going to be the final question. But just before we get to that, because that sounds exciting, I was reflecting on just this conversation about the Silver Poet and Feridun Farrokhzad, and I was thinking, part of the tragedy of what happened to him in the diaspora, in terms of what you're saying about, him being killed off, not just literally, but metaphorically as well, by the industry and by society, by Iranians, not showing enough appreciation or interest. Do you think that Feridun Farrokhzad, if he was around today, I feel like it would be different. I feel like he would get a different kind of reception, and he would have access to audiences that just were not available to him in the late 80s and the early 90s. What do you think?
I think you're right. I want to tell you one little very, very interesting story. I'll try to say very quickly.
No, take as much time as you want. It's your time, please.
After a couple of success on a stage, بوی خوشش and سهم ما از خانه پدری, we had a mutual friend, Farhad Zanich. They were so close to each other. And Feridun has written a letter to Farhad. He gave it to me and I read it. And that was his heartbreaking letter to Farhad of Iranian in Shahr Ferishtagan or Los Angeles. Okay? But he told me Feridun has told him, tell Hushain Tozi to write a play for 3 people, Shohreh, Hushain, and me. I like to play their son. I couldn't digest it. I was so stupid. Now I'm saying I was so stupid. I didn't have this shu'ur to understand him. He would love to have Shohreh and I as his parents. And I didn't get it. So I ignored it. I wish I could get it and then write a play, work with him as my son, as Shohreh and I's son, and then we would go on in theater and then probably musicals, so he would still be with us. So this story, amazing story.
It's an amazing story. I knew that story. If you forgive me, and to all the people listening around the world who do get it and I don't, I still don't get it. How was he going to play your son?
Because he never was a character to think in the shoebox. You know? He was always out of the box. That would be fantastic. That would be amazing. You know. And still, I think he would be with us, going around with his fame and popularity and the talent of, and he loved acting, as you know. But anyway, that did not happen. But if he was here today, we don't know. Are we changed? Are we Iranian changed? Look around you. We are killing each other. We are naming each other.
Yeah.
Something happened in Los Angeles a week ago with Parviz Parasturi and I don't want to get into it.
Yeah.
But look what we are doing aftermath. Whatever happened, see what we are doing to each other. It's amazing. I think the whole Iranian community, Iranian diaspora and inside the country, we are all against each other. Government is against people. People are against governments. Iranian inside are against people outside. People outside of Iran are against. What is this? We are ruining this garden, this beautiful garden that is Persia. We are doing it. We're all doing it. I'm not okay. Of course, I'm not saying they are exceptional, but in general, what we are doing to this beautiful country. Anyways, I'm not sure if he was around, like. Right now, what we would do with him? Probably he wasn't able to pay his rent. I know some big singers here, famous singers, fantastic voice. They have difficulties to pay the rent.
Yeah, there's that too. Yeah,
you know that.
Yeah.
So let's go back to my dream from 1979, 1980.
Well, hang on a second, because I just want to say something about what you just said. What do we do? I really believe one of the reasons, I started Rook. One of the reasons I wanted to do this, and I know that the whole team feels this way, is that I don't necessarily think the answer to finding some kind of global unity amongst Iranians is going to be found in politics. But I do think it can be found in culture, and it can be found in a common language, in the arts, in what we are as a people, and I think that's the kind of work you do that really crosses ideological or these sort of political lines and finds the common ground, and that's what I hope to do, because I know that we are deeply polarized, but when Shajarian died, we were all together. When the Team Melli is in the World Cup, we're all together. On Nowruz, we're all together. Culturally, we're capable of that, right?
I couldn't agree with you more. Absolutely right. I think any revolution that is not based on culture is going to not succeed. Is going to fail. Every revolution wasn't based on art and culture. Didn't succeed. Of course, years later. But anyway, I agree with you. I really need to, you allow me, before we leave the Silver Poet, I have to mention three people.
Please.
First of all, my wife, Shore, had put up with it for 3 years because the casting was changed like 17 times, believe it or not. And then I got to thank the cast. They were all talented. They were so perseverance, so willing to work, and they loved the job. Thank them. And then the first friend that pushed me to do this was Homa Sarshar in Los Angeles, and he helped me a lot to be able to, by then it was like 14 people on a stage. We had live band on a stage. But later on, we had to cut them off. Anyways, and then the second, Mandana Zandian, who was then later helped me to published this book, I told her I'm so grateful to them. So grateful to them. And that was the first time anybody outside of my family or team was helping me to do a play.
Thank you for doing that. That's a beautiful thing to give the shout out to all those people. All right, I know you've overstayed. I've kept you here longer than you probably wanted. I'm so grateful. You had a dream. You came to the U.S. You're in New York in the early '80s, and you have a dream of being on Broadway. What are you going to tell us about that?
A couple of months ago, I received text or email from people I didn't know. Mr. Tuzi, I think you should audition for the part Baba for the Kite Runner. I said, oh yeah, thank you very much, but I'm so busy working on this Shahnameh, and I spent $85,000 on something to be taped. For some reason, I had no experience on making movies. So anyway, no, I cannot do that. And a friend of mine called me, a fellow actor called me, Hussein, did you audition for Baba? It's Broadway. I said, no, I couldn't do that. I have no time to memorize that. I have no time to work on it. I'm depressed. And then later, same guy called me. You are making a big mistake. You should do that. I think you are good for that part. Anyway, for some reason I said, okay, it happened.
Wash it.
I said, boy, exactly. John, thank you for remembering it. I said, Bosh. And because I said Bosh, and when I make a promise, I do it, I go all the way. So I auditioned I called my agent, I said, submit me, So, and it was on Zoom. I auditioned for Baba. And by the way, they made a movie. I love the book. They made a movie. I didn't like it at all. So anyway, having that in mind, I auditioned for Baba in a couple of days. Nothing happened. I said, as usual, I made an audition. I worked my heart out, but it didn't happen. So they called back. They asked my agent if Mr. Tuzi is interested to do another part. I said, it depends on the part. What is the part? General Tahiri. So I read it and I said, okay, it's not it's not the lead role or one of the lead roles, but it's a colorful role. Mm-hmm. So I auditioned, and they kept auditioning me twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, 7 times, 8 times, and I was enjoying it because I was interacting with theater people, not movie people.
Hang on a second. Hang on a second. Are you auditioning by Zoom, or did you go to where are you doing these?
No,
auditions?
By Zoom.
And do you, at this stage in your career, are you bothered by having to audition, or do you?
Of course. And I hate auditions.
Yeah. Do you get nervous about it at all, or no? Or you not?
Yeah, of course, absolutely. Especially English is my second language, and I neglected for so many years. After I moved back, I moved to Los Angeles. All I did was doing plays in Farsi and speaking in Farsi.
But if they call you back 8 times, they're clearly interested, right?
Absolutely. And then at the end of the day, they told me, would you like to be local hired? That means because they take actors who live in New York City because they don't want to pay for the first class plane and then accommodation because it's so expensive. I said, listen, this is not about money for me. I like to do it, whatever, local hire. But everything else is so fantastic. So this is a dream coming true after 4 years.
So what are you going to do it?
Absolutely.
When does it when? When are you gonna...
I'll be in New York June 1st, and then the rehearsals start at June 6th. Previews start at July 6th for a week, and then performances.
Wow.
It's about 100 performances up to the end of October.
You're moving back to New York.
I'm moving back for 5 months, and I'm really not very excited because I have to leave my home, my family, and my 2 plays that I have, Silver Poet and Shahnameh. But you know what? this opportunity comes once in a life.
Yeah, man, you are. Come on, you are exciting. You are excited.
That's wonderful. I'm so excited. I'm so happy about it.
That's amazing.
I'm so happy about it.
That's amazing. That's a great story. This is almost as good as working with David Bowie for 8 days.
Thank you. And Gian, very quickly.
Yeah.
When I was working hard job in Manhattan, New York, where I was working was very close to Broadway, in that area, 44th Street and Broadway. So we had 1 hour for lunch. Everybody would go to a restaurant or cafe to have dinner, lunch. I would get 1 sandwich, go around, watch all the windows of all the theaters, and watch the pictures and read the critics. They used to copy and put it in the window. Yeah. And I read them all because I was like crazy. But then I forgot all about it. After 40 years, this happened.
Your screenwriting, the movie of your life there. That scene has got to be in it. You staring up at the billboards and then, 40 years earlier. I mean, that's amazing.
So never lose your hope. They say in Comedy Elahi, mm-hmm. It says on the top of the hill, it says, ناامیدان خوش آمدید. Welcome, hopelesses. Welcome. So being hopeless is like being in hell.
It's been very, very, very inspirational getting to talk to you. I'm honored. I'm so thrilled that we spent this much time together. Thank you for doing this. Congratulations on all the work. And I'm thrilled that you'll be in New York. You're not too far from Toronto. I'm going to have to come see the show. That's amazing.
Please do. Thank you so very much.
Thank you
for having me.
Thank you so much for doing this. I hope to see you again soon. Merci.
Sure. Merci از شما.
خداحافظ.
خداحافظ.
Iranian-American playwright and actor Houshang Tozi. You've seen him in lots of great American movies and TV series. One of his latest works is a musical play called Silver Poet, where he appears in the role of the legendary Iranian showman, poet, and writer Feridun Farrokhzad. Also, look forward to seeing Houshang on Broadway this summer. That's really, really exciting to know and to see and to look forward to. Houshang Tozi joined us from Los Angeles, California today. Microphone's back on for Captain Reza and Groovy Shaya, who've been sitting here patiently.
Yeah, you know what I'm happy about? The fact that Houshang wasn't actually listening when I was talking, and he can hear it after, and it'll save me the impression.
That's right. When he listens back to this show,
it's gonna not like my impression.
You're referring to the fact that about an hour ago, before we started the interview,
yes, I made an impression.
Everyone had forgotten that, but except you. But now you're bringing it back up.
But I'm also inspired by his advice to young talents. Just get up and do it, man. Just get up and do it.
Yeah.
That was nice. That was lovely and true.
Just do it.
Just do it.
There's variations on that advice that people give, which is like, just keep going, move forward, don't stop, all of that, right? Yeah. Try writing every day something. Try this kind of notion of don't pause, don't overthink it.
Yeah, don't overthink it.
Just do it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's nice.
What do you think about living 8 days with David Bowie?
Well, he didn't get into, I was trying to badger him for some details, and he was playing coy, Oh, he was nice, he was quiet.
Maybe he was nice and quiet.
No,
maybe
I'm sure he was nice and quiet. I mean, Bowie sounds like a nice guy, and everybody's always said that, but no, I couldn't be more jealous of Houshang Tozi. Who cares about all his great career stuff that he's done? I mean, he hung out with Bowie think about how cool that makes Houshang. How much cooler. Yeah. He was already cool, but now,
cool
the Bowie proximity. If you're near Bowie, it oozes off Bowie. It comes, it works on you. I thought it was really interesting that when he was talking about Feridun Farrokhzad and how he really wanted people to know who he was, not just as a sort of political figure or something, but as a poet and an entertainer.
Yeah, and I really appreciate this vision that Hushang tried to like do it, because Feridun Farrokhzad, his lyrics, I'm talking about the lyrics, like the songs that he wrote. I mean, it's really, really ahead of his time. Really, like, I mean, right now, if I cover one of Feridun Farrokhzad's song, you wouldn't understand that it's for like 40 years ago.
Wow.
You think that I just wrote.
And
that.
why don't you do that? Why don't you cover the?
That's true. Do the song I sang. Sorry. Apologize.
You know, you probably have a very nice voice, singing
Do
voice,
I?
but you ado dar miari. You know, you try. You
You're
do a
too kind.
You
I
play
don't
a
know if I
character
do.
instead of just singing the song as Reza,
Yeah.
Captain
Maybe
Reza.
one day. Maybe one day.
All right, listen. It was such a pleasure to have Hushang on the show. I hope you guys you get to see this, the Silver Poet,
Oh,
if he performs it again. You missed it when he was here
I
in Toronto.
did.
It was such
but
a
I'm gonna.
such a great show.
out.
Thank you, Hushang. Thanks for being on the program. And well, it's Monday,
Yes.
Ooh.
and this time Keon's not here, but the letters don't wait for Keon.
That's right. They don't.
So we
stop
got to get to the
coming.
letters. It's the letter of the week. Letters of the week. Letters of the week. Letters of the week.
Yeah.
We got some letters about. We got a bunch of mail about Kiosk, the band, being here last week. Arash Sobhani, Ali Kamali, Casey Bondar, and Nima Ahmadiyeh were in the studio performing and talking. And one of the things we did was had a conversation around. I mentioned this earlier when we were talking to Mohammed about Abadan, about the fragile relationship that especially young people in Iran have with hope and hopelessness. And actually, we posted a Rook moment of that. You can see on our Instagram and Telegram channels of that conversation on video with the Kiosk guys. A couple of letters about that. This is from Narges. Thank you all for this interesting topic. I think our society really needs to think about the power of hope in tragic moments as these days we are experiencing. As Ernst Bock well said, the most tragic form of loss is the loss of the capacity to imagine that things could be different.
Wow.
Thank you for that, Narges. This from Atefe Tabosh. Love the interview. Love Arash Sobhani as an artist. Love Arash Sobhani as a human. I wish him and the band best of luck. You are the greatest. I wish I could go to the concert. I guess this was before the concert on the weekend in Toronto. And to Gian, I 100% believe that IRGC should be on the terrorist list on every country, for every country. Kudos to the Americans and the Trump policy to acknowledge that. I wish that could happen in Canada too. See the mess over the soccer game. We love our soccer team and we don't want IRGC to accompany them to Canada. Keep shining, Rook team.
Wow.
Well, this raises the topic of the soccer game,
yeah, it
and
does.
I want to do on a future episode of Rock. I forgot the name of the show.
Yes. Finally, forgets the name of his own show.
I want to talk about this soccer game because we, of course, were excited when the game was first announced. We talked about, who would I support, Canada or Iran, and then there was an outpouring, especially led by some of the families of the victims of Flight of 752, saying, you know what, we don't feel comfortable with this game being played in Canada. We don't think this should be here. We think this confers. Creates the conditions of too much respect for the regime, allowing a friendly game being played with a team that is seen as an organ of the regime. We've received a lot of opinions about this game on, I have to say, on both sides of this issue. There's obviously a lot of people who are passionate about the game being canceled and who are happy that the game did get canceled. And then there's a lot of folks saying, let's keep sports out of this. Let's not punish the players on Team Melli. Wouldn't this be a good way to
Improve the situation.
improve relations with Iranians in general and in the West, etc.? So I really actually want to do this justice and have a proper conversation with different people represented on this, because obviously for some folks it was a no-brainer. This game shouldn't happen.
Yeah.
And then there's other folks saying, I oppose the regime. I hate the regime. Why can't I go and support Team Melli? And those folks don't represent me. Who said that? So it's a tough one, because you really want and hope for there to be unanimity on this. And based on the reaction we're getting, there really isn't.
No.
There's a lot of different opinions.
No, I've had this. I've shared this. I can share the same experience with you. I didn't care one way or another about the game, because I'm not really a huge soccer fan. So they were like, "Oh, it's gonna get canceled. It's not gonna get canceled." I'm like I'm not a huge soccer guy. But I overheard a guy talking, like being super pissed, like بازیمونم کنسل شد آقا به خاطر
He didn't want the game.
He didn't want the game to be canceled. He was pro game. He's like, screw politics, leave it out of it. We're just gonna go have a good time. It's good for our image. And then I was like, yeah, good. You see, there are a lot of people like that. So I was on the same page until a friend of mine called me just randomly, and he was telling me, he was like, yeah, so-and-so, a member of the victim of the 752 flight, she slept well tonight, because they realized that at least like the game got canceled,
right.
Something came out of all that effort. And to me, I was like, you know what, good for her, maybe it's worth it. Screw the game. Who the hell are we to say, like, why my happiness is worth like her, like, no, they're gonna come here 2 years, 3 years from now under the same regime or different, doesn't matter. I'm gonna get my game, I'm fun. But this may be the only night that she's gonna sleep.
Well, I don't know about all that, but certainly when you listen to the arguments of, and again, I mean, it gets complicated.
Murky.
I mean, I heard somebody was making the argument, I think it was one of our team members, saying, well, what if Canada had made the rule where the IRGC component, those folks couldn't have come, and leave that decision, like you let the players come, but then the coach is mixed up. I mean, it's all, I don't really know what the answer is. I do think it's confusing, because I presume at World Cup time, there's going to be a lot of Iranians around the world supporting the Iranian team, right? Yeah. And they should, and as is their right to support Team Melli without being accused of not caring about 752. But at the same time, again, I mean, you read the editorial from some of the family members of and you go, wow, cancel the game. I mean, right? So
it's as I said, like, I had a mixed and complicated relationship with this issue myself.
I just always hope our community can talk about these things instead of not just yell at each other.
Listening is key,
and that starts with you, Reza. Please start listening to Shaya. All right, we were in the middle of letter. Did you want to say something about this, Shaya?
I mean, if it gives hope to our community, so let's cancel the show.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cancel the show.
I'm not canceling the show.
No.
You mean the game?
Rock.
Yeah.
Let's cancel Rock.
We can cancel Rock, but not Rook. We had our Contemporary History of Iran episode this past week was about how the Persian language was affected and changed after the revolution of 1979. We had a great guest on, Dr. Khatire Sheybani, who's a linguist and author and somebody who's thought a lot about these things. I encourage you to listen to that episode. It was from this past Thursday, our Choi, as we call it, the Contemporary History of Iran episode. This from Ozzy Karami. Wonderful interview. I recommended all of my colleagues who are English teachers like I am to listen to it too. I'm looking forward to more talks with Dr. Sheybani.
Oh, nice.
And finally, our letter of the week.
Ooh, letter of the week. Khamas Qaranat.
Well, it's funny you should say Khamas Qaranat.
Why?
And it's funny because I'm going to invoke my father again here. The name of my father, Farhang, because I talked about him earlier in the show, because of course he was born in Abadan, and we talked about Abadan. Well, on this episode with Dr. Sheybani, I also talked about my dad, because I talked about how, and Khamas Qaranat being one of them, how the Farsi, the Persian that I learned was from my father. Father was 40 years older than me, my late father, beautiful late father. So he was growing up in Iran in the 40s, 1930s, 40s, 50s. He was, a kid in the 30s. And so the Persian he learned was from almost 100 years ago. He left Iran in the 60s with my mom, right?
That's
The 1960s.
amazing.
So the stuff that when I speak,
Yeah.
you know, benim manzil man, and you guys go, dude, nobody says manzel anymore. It's you know, like it's because I'm speaking the language that I learned from my father from 100 years ago.
You speak on the Farsi. for
Khamas
100 years
Kharanat.
ago.
Including words that nobody even like. We had to do a contest to find like
Man.
somebody in Calgary who knew the word khamas
It
kharanat.
is bizarre. You don't know how to say I want water, but you say like Khamas Qaranat Kilish.
I do know. I know how to say I want
Nah, I know
water,
you do. You're polite.
but my dad would say ab khordani.
But that's true. Too.
Yeah.
Here's another thing. Well, that's actually applies today too. Ab khordani is like drinkable water.
Drinkable
right?
water, yeah.
As opposed
But you
to-
wouldn't say that in Canada. Please
No,
bring
not
me
in
some
Canada.
drinkable water.
Every
You'd say,
water is drinkable.
just bring me some water.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
you can be ab khordani.
Yeah,
you
not
know.
to get melancholic and sad about it, but still they're dealing with Ab khordani in Khuzestan.
No, but in I mean in Tehran also we have Ab Chah and Ab Khordani. Ab Chah was for like Shostashu and Ab Khordani.
Still, like now though, today.
when I was kid, it was. Well, I don't
Well, that
know
was a
about
long
In
time ago.
Thailand is actually it's not like they say you don't drink fat.
The letter of the week
Hmm.
is from Reza, unrelated.
It's from-
Reza, I'm going to say Ayin, Aein.
Yeah,
Reza Ayin, who says when I'm speaking about my dad, that is absolutely correct. I harnessed vocabulary that my grandparents would have used when they were young. When I used the phrase salmuni instead of Areshka, I was mocked. I feel your pain, Jian. It's so funny because my dad would say salmuni. That's all I know for the haircutters, right?
yeah.
That's an old word?
It's a barber shop. or
Yes.
hair salon.
Right.
Same
right.
thing. Barber shop is like salmoni.
Benim salmuni, benim manzel. Khamas kharanat.
Sal-
Reza Ayin, you have the letter of the week. Thank you, everybody, for your posts on any of our platforms. Thank you for subscribing. If you want to write us an email, you can do so at info@rookmedia.com. Info@rookmedia.com. This is full time for Rook for today. Thank you, guys. Thank you to those of you listening. Our website is rookmedia.com. If you haven't visited it, please do. Check out all the past episodes, all the guests, all the shenanigans, all the serious topics and funnies are all there at rookmedia.com, including all the episodes of The Contemporary History of Iran and Unmarried Persian Girls. Rookmedia.com. Thanks to the amazing team who put this show together. Savi Roham, talented Anahit, Taponta the artist, the fabulous Kian, Super Parisa, Smart Pega, Ahoy Merdad, Captain Reza, and Groovy Shaya. Thank you to all of you out there for supporting us and sharing our content. Please subscribe if you have not done so already. Find me on Instagram at Jian Gomeshi. And as ever, as my father would say,
Khamas
what do you say?
Kharanat.
Mizun Bashi.